Hi, this is Jennifer Hicks with Purpose Planning. Happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving. I hope you and your family are doing well. COVID has changed a lot of things this year, but it doesn't have to change our traditions. I'm sharing one of my traditions with you, which is my homemade pumpkin bread. I don't know where my mother got this recipe, but she's been making it since, I'm guessing, before I was born. I've been making it for decades, and many of you have tasted it. It's one of my favorites, and so I'm going to share my recipe with you today, and I hope you enjoy it, and I would love to hear about your traditions. If you have something you want to share, send us an email. So how I start my pumpkin bread recipe is I put all the wet ingredients except oil. Oil is last. I put all the wet ingredients, the pumpkin, the water, the eggs, I put it all in first and just mix it up. This is just something I've been doing for decades, and this is how I do it. Here's a trick. It calls for 2 cups of pumpkin. Well, you notice I just filled the thing. I always put extra pumpkin in, probably why it's moist and pumpkin-y. I put the pumpkin in there, and then it calls for 4 eggs. For you that don't know, I always break the egg in a container before I pour it in so I don't get eggshell in my batter. And I do one at a time because I get eggshells. So now I've put in the water, the pumpkin, and the eggs. I just beat it up to where it looks like just pumpkin again. Then I put in all the, what I call the small ingredients. The soda, the salt, the teaspoon items. When you see this recipe, it calls for cinnamon and nutmeg. I always do heaping, full, overflowing teaspoons of the nutmeg and the cinnamon. Everything else I measure relatively exact. And then I just did all of that and just poured it in here so it all gets mixed in with that base. And once that is mixed, then we start adding the flour and the sugar, and that's it until we get to the very last ingredient, which is oil. So the next thing I do is I put in the sugar. So many of you know I kind of have my little OCD issues, and so I just put in the sugar next because, again, sugar and moisture would mix well together. And I mix that together, and then I work on the flour. As you notice, I don't really care if it's mixing while I'm putting it in there, but I put the 3 cups of sugar in there. So now we're going to put the flour in. It calls for 3 1/3 cups of flour. I live in elevation now, so that last third, I don't use the whole third of a cup. It's dry here and it makes the pumpkin bread too dry. For everyone that lives in the lowlanders, all my friends in Missouri and Ohio, Texas, you're going to want to use that extra third of flour. I don't put it in all at once. I put about a cup in at a time, let it mix, and scrape the sides. So if you live in elevation, you probably already know you have to alter the recipe a little bit. For everyone else, follow the recipe. So I've put the 3 cups of flour in there, and my mixture is pretty close. So I'm not going to use the full third, and I know I hate it when people do this to me, but I'm only going to put just a small amount, maybe another tablespoon and a half of flour in there. Double check it, and I think I'm done with all my ingredients except oil. That's the biggest to do, is put your oil in last. So I've got the mixture, and I wanted to show you it's really dense and almost pasty. It's not a batter that's going to move, and it's a batter that sticks to the beater. So it's a different color than you saw earlier. So it's got all the ingredients in there, and it's really thick. Because it's thick, you can't just pour a cup of oil in there and it's going to mix. I'm going to do about a third of a cup at a time and then scrape the sides, and I will show you what it looks like once I get the oil mixed in. So once the oil is incorporated, it takes a little time. You do a third at a time, and you'll understand once you do this once. But there is no oily This is not oily. It is incorporated and it does take a little time. And this is not as dense. It's more of a batter than it was previous to putting the oil in. So I just show it to you just so you get an idea. You don't want it to look oily. You want it to look like batter. So this is what makes my pumpkin bread a little bit unique and a lot of fun. When I grew up, my mom always used those 1 pound metal coffee cans or those big tomato cans or big juice cans. Well, nowadays it's hard to find cans. So I will grab in the fall, keep cans, tomato sauce, tomatoes. I will grab, this might have even been some kind of tuna or salmon can for all I know. This one we will all recognize. It's way back when, a metal can that your coconut used to come in. So normally I don't keep cans, but I will keep some unique sizes because it's fun to cook. If you don't have any cans, you can go buy the little metal things or cook it in any kind of dish that you have, loaf pan that you have. But before you put the batter in, spray flour. And this was the greatest invention a few years ago because used to I'd have to do this all by hand. Now I have spray flour. I don't care what brand you buy, but you have to make sure you get it in the bottom of the can very good. Put a heavy coat on there. The top is less important, but make sure you spray this in the bottom of the cans and your pumpkin bread will pop right out. So I have put the batter in the cans after I've sprayed them. You want to start with about 50% because remember we put baking soda in here and these will rise. So they're about 50 to 75% full. You know, some things are a little more full than others. And I'm going to stick them in the oven and I'm going to put the big ones in the back because they're going to take over an hour to cook. I'll put the little ones in the front and I've set it for 30 minutes. I don't even check it for at least 30 minutes. And these small ones will be almost done in 30 minutes. Okay, everyone, this is the first 30 minutes. I'm going to show you what these look like. The small ones are in the front, and so I know that the small ones are closer to being done than the ones in the back. So I just take a knife. That one's done. Everything came out clean. That one is not done. A little too doughy. And because that one, and I can see this one, let's try the loaf. It's not done. So everything is fairly close. This small one is done. And because there were air bubbles, all of these in the back just need to be poked. You just need to poke them, get the air bubbles out, and it will keep it from spilling over and making a mess, somewhat, in your oven. So now I cook these about at every 5 to 8 minute intervals until they're done. To double check to make sure your pumpkin bread's done, I take just a sharp knife and I will stick it in usually the sides. So when this came out of the oven, it was much taller, but I stick it in the side. And if it comes out moist, your bread is done. If it comes out with dough on it, you need to put it back in there. That's the challenge that you have with different sizes. If you don't poke the top of the bread as it's cooking, like I showed you before, it will have a blowout and it will build up pressure. It'll have an air bubble in there and it will make a lovely mess all over your oven. But it's done. It's been sitting here for hours. This is completely cold. There is nothing warm about it. If you spray correctly, all you have to do is just shake and your pumpkin bread comes out perfectly. Even if it's crusted around the top, you just break it loose and it will come out very nice. These I just give as is, and I don't take those necessarily out of the containers because I like to reuse these until I'm done. And when the season's over, I throw them away and I gather more next fall. I hope you enjoy. If you have any questions or if you have a great recipe, again, give me an email, give us a call. We'd love to hear some of your family traditions.